Hello you guys, today is going to be a video talking about how I budget monthly and how I steward, right, how I financially steward the things that God has blessed me with. So the first thing that I'm going to go in is my monthly, how I do my monthly budget. So the first thing I do is I add up all my monthly expenses. So, sorry guys, it's a little loud, my son in the background. So I'm first going to go into how I do my budget monthly. So the first thing I do is I add all my expenses for the month. So for me, that's my tithe. So my tithes, I like to give more if I can. I always round my tithe up. So say if my tithe is like 42, I round it up to 50. But I'm going to go more into how I do giving later on in the video. So my tithes, rent, PG&E, phone bill, food, and debt, and then I give myself a weekly budget just to spend on anything that I want to spend it on. So I usually do a good way to do your weekly budget is to create your weekly budget, then times it by 4, then you have your weekly budget for the month. I usually do it weekly, and I usually do it in my head, but I want to get more into how God has directed me into doing it, just to make it easier for me. So I add up all my monthly expenses, and then I get that number, and then I go to my work check how much I'll be making for the month. And then I recently started a new job, but I have in the switching jobs and things. But I'm gonna get all into that. All goes into this video later on. But I kind of see how much my work check is going to be, and I get paid weekly, and then I add up that number times it by 4, and that tells me how much money I'm going to make for the month, not including the money that God might bless me with. So I get that number, then I subtract that number from my monthly expenses, then I divide it by 4, and that tells me how much I need to take out of each check weekly. And now I'm going to go into how I do like my weekly budget. So when I get paid, the first thing I do is I pay my tithes. I have to pay God before I pay anything else. I put aside the rest of the money needed for my expenses, and then the rest of my money I put into savings. And then for that weekly spending budget that I have, what I do is to take it out in cash. It makes it a little bit easier for me, because I used to just do it in my head, which made it kind of like, it was like, I don't know, a lot of my things I did in my head, but a better way to do it is, I feel like what God directs me to do is to do it in cash. Probably make it easier for me, and then also just having to have that discipline to not overspend, right? What I tend to do is I overspend my weekly budget, not by much. When I do overspend it, it's by a few dollars, but I still want to be on that. I know that next time around, I say next time around because right now I'm in the process of working here and there, but I'm in the process of working here and there. But once I get because I don't really have a weekly budget right now, I want to get more into that in the video, kind of like why it's really good to steward your money well, because God had called me out of my job. But once I get back into working steadily, I'm going to be strict on that weekly budget, and I'm going to get more into giving about that as well. So that is how I monthly budget and how I break it down weekly. And now I want to go into savings. So I don't budget out money for clothes, or hair, my womanly stuff like hair and makeup, or when it comes to buying clothes, if I feel like I need clothes, or the weather, I know that I'm running low on clothes, or I need clothes, when the weather changes, I tend to order clothes. If I don't have them, I will order them. But I like to spend the minimum amount on clothes, just because, not because I have to. I could up the budget more, but I prefer just to spend the minimum amount, because I personally just don't care too much about clothes. So what I do is I look at what I have to spend, so going off of my savings and how much money I'm making, and I kind of go with that. But I like to spend the minimum amount, so I could spend more, but I like to spend the minimum amount, because I just don't care too much about clothes, and I like to put the majority of my money into savings, because it blesses us to bless others. So with my womanly, my beauty stuff, I bought hair in bulk, and I practice makeup. I do makeup, so I bought my makeup. It's in bulk, but if I have to up on those things, I tend to get them as I need it. And for my other beauty needs, I get them as needed. That's kind of how I go about those other expenses that are needed throughout the month, those other expenses. That your beauty clothes as needed, other household things as needed. I don't budget out for those things. I just laundry, I don't budget out for laundry. I kind of just get it as needed. So going into giving, so I believe that we're stewards, right? I believe that everything we have belongs to God, and we're just stewards. So going into giving, I give as God directs me to give, you know. So whatever He directs me to give, I give. Whether that's giving something where something I don't have, you know. When I say that, I mean like it looks like, you know, it's something I don't have, meaning like it seems like I don't have it. It seems like I don't have it, meaning like, oh, I feel like I might need this for like bills, or if I give this, like I'm gonna be like, you know, short on these funds or short on savings, or it's like, you know, if it I changed my mind, like I don't have that mind, but giving that, like I feel like if like, but just giving it, I'm trying to explain it in the best way of what I mean, like explaining it in a way where trying to explain it in the best way where you guys can kind of understand what I mean when I say I don't have this, you know. But whatever God directs me to give, I give, whether it looks like I have it or not, because we are stewards and we trust God, right? We're stewards, so everything I have belongs to God. So when He tells, like, it's His anyway, I'm not questioning, you know what I mean? And I love to give, and I know that God will cover me if He directs me. Like if He directs me to give something that it looks like I might need, He'll cover me. So if He directs me to give, and like I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna, like I won't, but like if I give this, I couldn't, like if I give this, I couldn't pay rent. I know that He will come through, because He's not gonna direct me to give something and not come through. You know, that's just the God that He, you know, sometimes it's just the act of like, you know, faith, trusting in Him. But He will always come through. So just to give you guys two teachers I watched, Pastor Michael Todd and Apostle Kathryn. I'm going to link their YouTubes below, and I'm going to try to find the specific videos about giving and link like the specific videos when they talked about giving, because they're really, really good teachers. They have some really good teachings on this, and like they teach, you know, some really good teachings on this. You guys should definitely watch them. So I give however God directs me to give, and trust it whether it looks like I have it or not. And then with the giving, like we're supposed to give generously, you know, and I would ask God for wisdom about your giving. But the way that I tend to give is like I give generously. So if I see someone out and like I'm walking, if I see someone in need, I give it. Especially like if I see someone in need, I give it. And especially when it comes to groceries, like if I'm in the store and someone can't pay for their groceries, I will pay for them. Whether like if it's in my account, I pay for it. Whether it looks like when I mean like have it, like oh, if like when I say have it, I mean it in the sense of, because like it looks like I don't really have it, because I might need like, it might, like my position might be like I don't have this like to give, because I need this for like bills, but right now I don't need this for this. But like what I will say is that God has blessed me to be able to give and still have money left over. It still have an abundance. Give without thinking. To anyone to anyone who I feel like, you know, people I see that are in need, and groceries, right? And just giving generously, you know, to people who ask. And yeah, just give generously, you know. And yeah, but seek God about wisdom about your giving. You know, seek God with wisdom about your giving, because I do know that there's a way to give and not with wisdom. That's how I do giving, and I do believe that God guides you in certain situations for that reason. Like maybe the reason why I was in that grocery store at that time was because God knew that person was going to be able. God knew that person needed someone to pay for their groceries, and He knew that He had me there because I am a steward, and I would, you know, that like, you know, I would do it, and without question, you know, because I feel like that's something that everyone needs, is like, you know, because I feel like I would instantly do it, because it's just something that I've been feeling like it's a way, I feel like it's God setting it up, and it's a way to represent the love of Jesus, you know, to show people Jesus. But I do believe those moments are because God set them up, you know. God gives generously, so we give generously, and the Bible teaches us to give generously as well. So I just try to give as much as possible. So now I want to go into why we should save. Into the book of Psalms, it reads, the wise stores up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp stares down. Proverbs 21:20. So this scripture is something we can apply to our finances. So the wise store up money, but the fools spend theirs rapidly, right? So the wise thing to do is to spend. The wise thing to do is to save up money, and the unwise thing to do is to spend, like to gulp it down, which is like to spend it rapidly, right? So this is something that we all want to exercise, you know. And like I was going through like my story, I was in a shelter for a year, and during this time while I was in the shelter, I was able to save up a nice amount of money. So when I was out of work for a while, and then when I went back to work, I was able to save up money, and then I knew God blessed me with money for the things He was calling me to. So I knew He was calling me into starting a business, Jesus Christ Apparel Co. I'm going to leave the link in the description, and you guys, I'm going to put the name on the screen. You guys should definitely check it out. It's faith-based apparel. So I knew He was providing me provision for that. So I made sure I knew that He was providing the money that He was giving me was for that. So I made sure like I was saving for that. I didn't spend that. And then also He called me. I knew He was calling me into beauty. So I made sure that I saved money for that to be able to invest into the products that were needed to perfect those skills. So and then from there, so I made sure I did not spend that money. I made sure I kept that in savings because I knew that that's what God was. I knew that that's the money. I knew that that's what God wanted me to do. And then also I knew He wanted me to save. While I was in the shelter, I saved all my money. I didn't spend any extra. And during this time, I paid off my debts. God blessed me to be able to do this. So I was able to pay off my car, most of my payday loans, my school. So I was able to pay off my school loan, my one that I had to pay back to my school, and I have my financial aid one still, but it's not a debt, but God will bless me to pay. So I was able to pay off car, most of my payday loans, my school, my bills, my phone, and yes, I believe those are the ones. And now I only have I have a few more debts left, but I budget monthly for those because I know that God wants me to pay them. Right, so before I would not pay my debts because I just didn't want to give them the money. I just didn't want to give them the money. I just didn't see it as like, I was like, I'm not giving them my money, it wasn't a thing of mine, like, I was like, oh, well, like, I don't know, like, they just wasn't like, I just didn't pay them. Even when I had it, I just didn't pay them. But I know that God wants me to pay my debts, and I know that He wants me to pay my debts, so I pay them. And actually, now that my mind is renewed, I want to pay them as well. I see the importance of paying them and building my credit and paying people back, what's owed to them. So I pay them. Yes, I want to now. So yes, I pay them willingly. Going back into being in the shelter for a year, so I was able to pay most of my debts and save, and then God blessed me to be able to move, and I didn't pay anything for my moving, I didn't pay anything for my furniture, and so I was able to not spend any savings, any money on those things. I was able not to spend any money on those things, and God blessed me with a job. So now I'm on my monthly budget. About 2 months ago, God had called me out of my job, and He called me out of my job, and He told me to find another job, and I was looking for a job, and I ended up finding one, but that one ended up falling through, and I found another one, and I had started that one, and I work with children with disabilities, and it's summer now, so I am technically not working, but He called me to find another job, so I'm in the process of that. But if I would have never saved, I would have been in a bad situation because I wouldn't have had any funds to continue to pay the monthly expenses that I needed to pay. Saving, God blesses us with provision to be able to do these things. So, He blesses us with provision. We want to be wise with the things that He blesses us with, so saving up that money, right? And during this time, God called me to LA to go to a conference, and I was able to go to the conference, enjoy myself in LA, be a blessing to others, and come back home, pay those monthly expenses, and still have finances left over. So in this season of my life, it's going off my savings because the work right now, like my work is not steady. That's why it's so important to save up, so you never know what God is going to call you, what season you'll be in. If you're wondering why I have new clothes on, it's because I'm recording this on another day. I want to be talking about being a good steward. I'm going to be going to the book of Matthew, talking about the the parable of the talents of gold. And if you're not familiar, so it's a parable about a master who gave one servant 5 talents of gold, another servant 2 talents of gold, and another servant 1 talent of gold. And the servant that he gave 5 talents of gold, he had brought back 5 more. So I'm going to read that verse. And it says, The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you will trust me with 5 bags of gold, so you have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. And that is Matthew 25:20-21. As I was studying about stewardship, God guided me to the book of Matthew. And what he explained to me was like being faithful with a few, right? So like in my life, right? So like I don't have, I live in overflow with my position in life, but being faithful what he has given me, so he will make me ruler over much, right? More of that, increasing not just finances, but of everything he has gifted me with. So we can look at that for our life. We want to be faithful and steward well what God has gifted us, so he'll make us rule over much, not just for the much, not just for the, I don't believe we do things for blessings, but also just out of being faithful to God, right? Being stewarding well and just loving him out of love for God, right? Stewarding well what God has given us, and that is loving God, because one thing I've learned on my journey is like love never fails. Like when God says like the greatest commandment is love, because it's like when you love someone, you do those things. Like I love God, so I'm going to be faithful. I love God, so I'm going to be faithful. I love God, so I'm going to steward well with what he has for me out of love for him, because I love him. And God also guided me to the parable about the servant who had 1 bag of gold. I'm going to read the Bible verse of what the master said. It says, well then, you should have put money on a deposit with the banker, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. He didn't use the giftings that God gave him, and God said, you lazy and wicked servant. Okay, so we don't want to disappoint God. We don't want to, I feel like we don't want to hurt God. We don't want to hurt God. That's hurtful. It's hurtful to God. We don't want to disappoint God, and also fear God, okay? So yes, we don't want to disappoint God. We don't want to hurt God. So we want to be faithful stewards. We want to be good stewards over what God has given us, and with our giftings, right? And so going into the book of 1 Peter, it reads, God blesses us with gifts. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful steward of God's grace in its various forms. God blesses us with gifts like hospitality, beauty, comedy, love. These show the grace of God. So we are stewarding the grace of God in gifts. So we want to, steward well. Like we want to use, God wants us to use these giftings to serve others, and we are stewards of these giftings. And God, they are a gift from God, so they belong to God. But so we want to use them to serve others, to bless others, and yes, to serve others, to bless others. So this all goes into, I feel God guided me to talk about this, not even like guided me to talk about giftings, and not guided me to talk about giftings with the guided me to talk about giftings apart from financial, because these are by the grace of God, this is God's grace that gave us these gifts. We want to steward these well because they belong to God. It shows the glory of God, because when we good stewards over what God has gifted us with, when we good steward and deny ourselves to give. So one thing God has told me is like one thing God has told me is like denying myself my weekly budget to give. So instead of like denying my weekly budget to give, so giving my weekly budget. And these with Jesus gave his life, right? He sacrificed his life, and we want to sacrifice as well, like Jesus. This is going to be the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching this video about how I monthly budget, how I steward the finances God has blessed me with. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. In the description box of the video, I'm going to link, don't forget to in the description box of the video, I'm going to try to directly link the teachings of financial stewardship and of Pastor Michael Todd, from Pastor Michael Todd and Apostle Kathryn. And yes, and then also if you guys would like to order from my business, I have a faith-based apparel company called Jesus Christ Apparel Co. If you would like to order, the description will be in the description too. And thank you guys so much. God bless you guys.